Hello and welcome back to Uncle Sam Senior Corner. This week, I would like to speak to you a little bit about what is going on recently, especially with the radical communist platforms, which they're preaching tax the rich, so we could share into the wealth of the rich. Well, taxing the rich is a good idea, but we already taxing the rich. We have a graduated tax system in the United States, where it's kind of uh, sort of standard. If you earn less, you pay less taxes. If you're middle class, you pay a little more. If you're rich, you're supposed to pay a lot more. Although I do agree that the present tax code has a lot of loopholes, and the rich do take advantage of those loopholes to try and save some money by not paying some taxes, um, which is legal. There's a loophole there where they could actually claim expenses to diminish the amount of money they pay for taxes, and I'm sure this is happening. Today, it happened yesterday, and it's going to continue happening as long as we have this present tax code that we have right now, which is a graduated system. I suppose it's supposed to be a very fair type of tax code, but things do get sidetracked where maybe the well-to-do may be able to take some credits on certain items and certain I don't know, services uh, through a tax loophole. Now, there is another way of kind of eliminating that. It's kind of a radical idea, my radical idea, and I think this been discussed not only by me, but even politicians in the past, how to really be more equitable when it comes to paying taxes. Well, the idea is not my original idea. It's an idea which has been played around now for at least 20 years, or been talked about by legislators in 20 years, but it never has come to fruition where any action has been taken. And that idea is to abolish the income tax, abolish IRS, just abolish your personal income tax and go into a different type of tax. Now, let's go back, say, to the foundation when it was started, back to the founding fathers. Once they formed this nation, they had to figure out how to fund the government, the federal government. Well, at the time, they thought that the best system would be the tariff system. And that was the basis for raising money to run the government was through tariffs. And of course, as the time passed on, an income tax came to be, and where you would have be taxes according to your income, and there are certain rates which rate from zero to at one point it was 45% of your salary or your earnings. A graduated tax rate. Uh, However, the laws did change where the tax rates were lowered, and the maximum you could pay it today is about 35% if you're super rich. But what happens with this, the tax code, which was established, there were too many loopholes. And yeah, and again, I repeat myself, the rich could use some of the loopholes. Actually, even the middle class could use some of the loopholes to try and reduce paying some of their taxes. Reduce, I mean, you take some credits and you take some expenses, whatever it may be, which is allowed under the present tax code. And you'll be able to save a few dollars if you qualify to take that deduction. Uh, I know Mr. Trump has tried to make it more fair. And I know that we have a very large minimum deduction now, I mean, a standard deduction, whereby most people already are covered. But being as it may, it's a present tax code is graduated, and each level does pay its fair share. The ones which have a minimum wage or earnings during the year may not pay anything. And maybe the middle class may range between 10%, 15, 20%. Of course, the rich could pay more. But still, it is not really equitable. Let's talk about what's been talked about in the past, but no action has been taken. Let's talk about a value-added tax, a national value-added taxes. Abolish present income tax system and put on a national sales tax. That's what it really is. That would be, in my belief, that would be more equitable and more fair from level one to the top level of income. Basically, when you have a value added taxes, what happens is the more you buy, the more taxes you pay, you spend. But who buys the most? The rich and the middle class. They buy the most. Now, granted to you that if you put a sales tax, even the uh, not so well off will pay taxes also because they're paying the sales tax. But this system's been used by some countries and it's working. As a matter of fact, it's being used right now in some states and it's working. I'll give you a prime example. Florida has no income tax, but it does have a value added tax, and it's a sales tax. Everything is taxed in Florida except for food and health needs, health type of products which you need. Those are being exempt. Of course, Florida is kind of a peculiar state where you have very large uh, tourism. Tourism is great in Florida, especially during the winter months. And they kind of doing very well because when you have a tourism, they spend a lot of money and end up paying a lot of taxes to the state, to the sales tax. Consequently, Florida has a surplus. And you might have heard Mr. DeSantis or Governor DeSantis say, well, we have a big surplus. But that's how they get a big surplus. Not only is the sales tax doing it, but it's also, of course, good government and good management in government, which gave them the surplus. But however, there's no income tax in Florida. There's a sales tax, though, which is working on very, very well. So this could also be done nationally. But let's keep in mind that a tax is not a panacea for all the ills which we have today. I mean, if we switch to a national value-added tax, such as a sales tax, uh, you still have to have a balanced budget, federal budget, that is. You still have to be more frugal on how you spend your money. And again, the government spends money like it's water. They just print more money and your dollar goes down every time they do that. But A and B is made, it's another issue. Uh, but conceivably, if you do adopt a national income tax, you could conceivably also be in the black rather than the red every year. Well, if you have a surplus, guess what you could have to do? Well, if you have a surplus, then you could pay down the national debt, which past politicians and present politicians have created. And I mean, Democrats and Republicans, they have created this big deficit. Well, if you do have a surplus and using that income tax method, then you could reduce that national debt. We do not want to have our children and our grandchildren and their children have the burden of paying off the national debt. Eventually, the balloon is going to burst and something's going to happen, which will be tragic. That being, going back to the national sales tax, I think that's one method which really politicians and federal representatives should really study and consider because it would be more equitable. Some people may say, well, those people which are very poor and receiving government assistance, welfare, food stamps, whatever it may be, they're going to be hurt too because they're going to be paying taxes. Yeah, but let's also remember that they're receiving the benefits and they don't buy as much as we do as the middle class, as the rich, so-called rich, super rich people. The money, which is most of the majority of the money is spent in the United States, is for the middle class and the rich. So, who gets taxed the most? The very rich, which spend, like money is water, and the middle class, which, considerably to maintain a lifestyle, they also spend. Yes, the bottom has to pay some money because they're paying sales tax. But he's working in Florida. There's no reason why he should not work nationally. Because in Florida, if someone goes to buy a suit, let's say at Macy's or one of the department stores, at the end of the transaction, there is a sales tax. Now, does that person not buy the suit? They buy it anyway. It's working out. And guess what? Rich people are paying that tax. Middle class people are paying that tax when they purchase a suit. And even if you're in a lower income bracket, you're paying for that suit. And no one is complaining. So I like to just leave a thought that maybe you listeners and people who view this program should think about what is so bad about value-added taxes and abolishing income tax in the United States. Not only that, but you'd be saving a lot of money because you're abolishing in a department, one of the largest department in the federal government, so IRS. Not only that, I believe you have to have a department to control this sales tax or value-added tax. You would need some controls and you need some uh, kind of overseers, make sure that everyone is charged that tax. But it will not be as big. Now, I just want to say one thing before I go with it. This is my opinion, it's my thought. It's not my thought, really. It's a thought of many politicians and many people in the past which have talked about it, but really they never have acted on it. For whatever reason they have, maybe they want to keep the bureaucracy of the income tax department, like IRS. Maybe, I don't know, it could be for any reason. It could be maybe because they may not like it. It could be that maybe they think you're hurting people, but they really haven't really studied the situation. And I think if we start thinking about it, I think a lot of people will agree with me. Again, this is my opinion. It's not a political statement. I'm saying that the Democrats or Republicans are correct or incorrect. In generalities, there's been discussion regarding this. I just happen to agree with it, and I just happen to think that that would be the best way to do our taxation more equitably and produce more money for the United States government. And eventually, if the government's more frugal, if the government balances its budget with a value added tax, you will have a surplus to pay down the big deficit, the big debt which we have, big debt which our grandchildren and their grandchildren may have to pay for us. Anyway, thank you for listening to me, and I guess we'll see you next week with a different topic. I hope this today was interesting. Wishing you all well. God bless you and God bless America.